Hi there, this is Mel and this is How We Homeschool. Again, if you have any questions about homeschooling, whether you're a beginner or a pro, please feel free to like, subscribe, and leave comments below our videos. I love to hear questions and I would love to use your questions as future videos. Today, we are going to be talking about how we do sort of an all-in-one lesson plan or a comprehensive lesson plan. You might have noticed by now that I don't tend to reference a lot of boxed curricula in my videos, and that's mostly because we don't tend to use them. I don't actually have anything against prepackaged curricula, contrary to what you might think. My husband and I decided fairly early on that what we wanted to try doing was to build our own curriculum, and we wanted to use primarily a history paradigm, but also real life learning. We sort of agreed fairly early on that what was more practical is orienting our children through real life knowledge. So I thought I would show you sort of how we incorporate different modes and types of learning into one large project. And I am going to use, in this case, we're going to reference our own gardening project. This is a real life thing, and frankly, if 2020 taught us anything, it's that sometimes it's really, really nice not to have to be dependent on finding your food at the grocery store. So, real life gardening it is. You can do this even if your yard does not look like my yard. I realize that not everybody has the same space that we do, and we don't even live on acreage, really. I'm just talking about regular suburb backyard. If you live in an apartment with a balcony, you can do certain fruits and vegetables in pots, and it totally works. You can do an herb garden with your kids. You can start a fruit tree in a large pot. That works too. I know there are hundreds of YouTube videos on how you can do different tips and tricks to do like vertical gardens. I have a very good friend who's experimenting this year with pallet gardening, meaning she's going to use like discarded pallets in a V-shaped pattern in order to support her climbing plants, and I'm super excited to see how that turns out, mostly because I kind of want to steal the idea. I have, on a related note, I have seen videos where gardeners used discarded gutters and pallets in order to grow like small herb gardens vertically, which I think is amazing. And then as an added bonus, you get to use the fruits of your labor to lay your household table at the end of the day. Oh, one other thing, if you don't directly have access to growing space in your yard or on your balcony or whatever, one thing that you might look into is a community gardening project. So in our community, we actually have at least 2 different community plots where you can sort of sign up and apply for a spot, and sometimes they even have extra spots left over so you can try and get a second plot. And they're just there for you to like have your space where you can garden, you can plant usually whatever you want. They only have rules about like when planting season starts and when planting season has to end, because they have to like clear the space afterwards for everybody. But that's a doable thing too if you happen to live in a community that has it. So definitely look into that if you're able. So watch some YouTube videos on gardening with them. That's like your first step. Watch some videos, gather whatever information seems pertinent to your living situation, and then poll your kids for what vegetables they're interested in trying. You might find that like some kid doesn't like broccoli, but he likes the idea of growing his own broccoli and he's willing to try it if he grows it himself. You might find kids that really want to try the zucchini bread thing. You might find that your kids snack on tomatoes like mad, and it's kind of convenient to just be like, here, go out to the garden, collect your own tomatoes. I have literally planted sugar snap peas in my garden basically every time we've done one, and I don't think I've ever actually served sugar snap peas for dinner, because I'm pretty sure they're always gone by the time we actually get around to harvesting them. Like they just, kids go out and snack on them all day, every day. After step 1 is done, meaning you do your research and watch the videos and maybe buy some seeds from the store or online, a library of seeds. They actually had these seed packets available for free through our library. All we had to do, we just had to sign up and we took what seeds we needed. We don't want to take like too much or seeds that we're going to not end up using. And they just ask that you bring back some seeds at the end of your growing season. So when you're finally done growing your fruits and veggies, if you save some seeds, bring them back in like a jar or whatever, and they'll divvy them up into packets again, which I think is phenomenal. You want to do step 2, which for us is generally like planning the garden space. And last year we did this really intensively, where we were going back and forth and trying to figure out where in our yard we wanted to put our garden box, which we wanted to build, and how we were going to build it, and how much space we wanted to dedicate to the garden, and we didn't want to interfere too much with mowing and playing area and our septic field and all that stuff. So we had to do like quite a bit of planning. This year, way less planning because we already have the garden box. I've decided I'm not adding too much more to that, except maybe an accidental pumpkin patch back behind our shed, which happens to be where I dumped our extra leftover pumpkins last year. So in this case, I'm using graph paper and just having each of my kids plot out their own version of the garden in our space. So they get to measure out through this experience. They're learning the basics of how to draw a diagram, how to draw things to scale, meaning on our graph paper we have, each little box represents X amount of space in the garden. And how much space, and how do you want to divvy up that space? Do you want to do like 1 foot squares or 2 foot squares, or whatever works for however many vegetables you want to plant? Zucchini is wonderful, and we use it for zucchini bread every year, but it also, like, the plants tend to grow huge, basically. So we have to plan, if we're going to use that, we have to plan for extra space for these zucchini plants to expand, or else they're not going to grow well, and we're not going to have a good yield, and they're probably going to interfere with the other things that we're trying to plant near them if we don't plan for enough space. They get to pick out from our seeds which ones they would really, really prefer to use, whether they want to try and use a little bit of everything or just stick to their main, 6 veggies that they want to see over and over. And each of them gets to do their own version. So for my little one that's just learning to write, I actually am physically handing her the packets and helping her to know which words to copy out, and she gets to practice her letters and practice sounding them out, and it's a really phenomenal lesson for her. But this also works pretty well for my older kids, who now are pretty self-sufficient when it comes to doing diagrams, but it's still good practice for them. Good practice on handwriting, which my kids always seem to need. And they get to do the math on their own. I don't hand them like the instructions the way I do for the younger kids. They have to figure out like what scale they use. They are also responsible for knowing, to a certain extent, how to organize the fruits and vegetables so that we can maximize the space that they get. They can maximize how much sun these things get. You don't want to plant something that's really, really tall so that it's going to be blocking the sun for the things that are growing next to it. Which plants are going to need like stakes for support, and which ones are going to need like a taller lattice and stuff like that. So they get to use all of their previous knowledge and sort of bring it all together. And I work with them on keeping all of it organized and reminding them, okay, did you like compensate for how tall the corn is going to get, or whatever, that kind of thing. And we also can move on from there into step 3, which is the actual beginnings of the garden. We tend to do seed starters inside for at least probably about half of our plants, really. Like the corn we just put straight outside. Start our carrots, tomatoes, peas, cucumbers, all of those things inside for like a few weeks before planting season actually starts. So for us, we're in Michigan, which means we are starting to come up on the beginnings of seed starting season, which I will probably be doing next week with our kids. And seed starting just means you find some little way of like packaging. You can do the prefab sort of pellet situations that are usually available online, or you can find them at Walmart, Meijer, wherever. And those do work fairly well. They're very convenient for separating out your plants so that you can plant them individually without worrying about the tangle of roots and stuff like that. So I do recommend that. Then reuse them year to year if that's what's convenient for you, or you can just find other ways to do it. One year I just used like large flat Tupperware containers or large flat roasting and serving dishes, and I started them like in our windowsills, essentially. When and how do we need to separate these out? When and how should we be planting them in the future? how many, based on our garden plans that we pre-drew, how many plants should we be trying for, because we don't want to like overwhelm the space because, you know, we forgot and just got excited about peas. So we do all of the seed starting, and I divvy up the responsibilities for like watching the plants and watering the plants with my younger kids. Fun fact, I am terrible about keeping plants alive indoors. Absolutely awful at it. I basically kill almost everything. I even once killed an aloe plant, which is supposed to be impossible. Nevertheless, it happened. I find that it's really, really helpful to let the little kids have the experience of doing this. If you're afraid of like overwatering, you can give them just like a small plastic spray bottle and have them spray the plants. I will assign a kid to take pictures of the plants every day, just so that they can like look back and watch the growth and be like, well, it started out like this, but then it grew like this, and it seemed like it grew like 2 inches overnight, which is really exciting for the kids to do. And they start to learn that sort of sense of anticipation and like, oh my gosh, is something happening? This is so cool. And then we do something of the same thing once the plants are outdoors, where we take turns watering from the hose or with a watering can if it happens to be a kid that I can't trust with the hose. And that's our stage 4, is really just the planting outside. And I tend to get all of the kids involved with it. I had my older kids, when we were digging out our garden box, they were out there with me with the big shovels and the 2x4s and helping to make it happen. And they were hammering in the stakes right alongside me, and that was really cool. And then I also got to use my little ones to help, you know, dig the small holes for the plants, or help water, or help sprinkle fertilizer, or help sprinkle mulch that really wasn't even mulch at all. It was just sort of leftover leaves from our yard, because I don't want to buy mulch if I have it already in my yard. Yeah. And that's just how it is. Like, and we spent all summer basically like watching our plants grow and harvesting as we could. And we even had a scary thing where we went on vacation for a week and we came back and like everything was ripe all of a sudden, and we're like, we better collect all our vegetables right away. Oh my gosh. But it really worked. So right there, honestly, in this lesson, we have like necessary life skills being taught to your kids. And we all definitely learned that it's really incredibly helpful to not only be able to grow some of your own food, it saves you money that way, but it also is just supremely healthy to be outside playing in the dirt. I think it's frankly therapeutic for all of us. We also include math, we included science, we included writing, and we even included, in some cases, American history, because we were talking about like how the colonists were first planting all of their foods and what they tried, what worked and what didn't work for them, and whether or not we can incorporate those ideas for us. So these are all like comprehensive lessons, and you don't have to do it with gardening. You can do it with any number of other skills, but I really, really highly recommend trying the gardening route, even if it's just on a smaller scale. And you'll find that like it's a really fun and healthy family project that you can sort of get everybody involved in on their various skill levels, and you'll find yourself really rewarded by it. So that is it for today. This is Mel, and this is How We Homeschool. Thanks. Bye-bye.